Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Fernay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Fernay.
It's time for some Maryland Crabs.
Hello, it's John Fernay and Tim Hamilton for the latest episode of the Maryland Crabs.
And we're going to keep it a little bit light today. It's been a little heavy lately. I think everyone's exhausted. We are recording this a couple days.
Oh, you're just like a bitter Hillary supporter, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I got to be specific on that. It's just I'm kind of mystified. I'm upset, but I'm not upset that she lost. I'm upset that he won. It
was tough, and as I said in the election episode that we did, I couldn't vote for either, and I stuck to my word. I did not vote for either of the presidential options, and I know everyone's squawking. We got a bunch of emails saying, there's more than two. And okay, well, there were two major parties, so I did not vote for either of them. I did not vote for anybody that was running for president.
And I know everyone listening to this is sick of talking about it because we're recording this 2 days after the election, so it's still fresh.
It's a little bit raw.
And what killing me is going through Facebook. That is, right before the election, and I grew up Irish Catholic, so I went to Catholic schools, and I went. So I have friends.
And as an adult, are you what, like Jewish?
What is the opposite of Irish Catholic? Like Eskimo Lutheran.
There you go.
But so I have a lot of conservative friends, and I worked in TV for years, and did some comedy. So I have a lot of very liberal friends. So I have very few friends who are in the middle. So not very few, but I have a lot of extreme friends. So I unfollowed a ton of those friends during the election, and I thought it'll just be for the election. I love these people. I just couldn't take the constant stream of just yammering on either side. And I'm not doing that where I'm going to say, well, the conservatives are worse. Although I think they were a little bit, just because there's an anger there that you didn't get a whole lot with the liberals. The liberals could be preachy and shrill, but that said, I thought after the election, I'm going to unmute them and we'll all go back to normal. And I don't know. Again, we're doing this just 2 days after the election, so it'll be people get this, 7-8 days after the election. But I'm still stunned at the amount of shit that's going on Facebook. Just it's the new normal. I don't like it.
I don't either. And you look at Facebook back when it started, way back when, it was all kittens and puppies and videos of how to cook things. And we had a great time with it. It was, I'm going to the bathroom now.
Not a great time, because there's an eye roll going, it was so banal. It's going, oh my gosh, she updates all the time, and what do I care? But I yearn for those days again. The part is I've watched so many relationships just disintegrate. I mean, it's seriously people who grew up together in my neighborhood, and these are like best friends, and it's gotten so nasty and hostile. It's ridiculous.
I just read a statistic that the average Facebook user, and I would probably venture to say that you and I are probably above average Facebook users just with the amount of friends and the time we use it.
I'm above average on most things. John.
Yeah, well, that's what we thought. Little hands. The average Facebook user has lost 7 friends, which is really depressing when you think about it. And I mean, obviously, there's not a true friendship that's lost, but it's.
But you know what, too? So there's you and I both are on Reddit. And for those people who don't know, Reddit it's a great website. It's not quite social media. I guess maybe you could count it as social media. But essentially, it's all these categories, and people post links in every category. So if you're in a needlepoint, there's a needlepoint subreddit. And if you're in Annapolis, we actually belong to the Annapolis subreddit. And it's everything to do with Annapolis. Well, there's a subreddit called The Donald. And The Donald
I'm on that.
2.5. I am not. I got ejected, or what is called banned because there's another subreddit called Banned from the Donald, and so the Donald was promoting Donald Trump for president. And no matter it was the smallest infraction that you could say something like they would say something to the extent of Hillary had she had 700,000 emails that she deleted, and you go, well, I think it was only 600,000 banned. And so the ban from the Donald is absolutely hilarious because it's people listing the minuscule infractions that they cause them to be banned from the subreddit. But I'm seeing that kind of bleed into Facebook a little bit. Because, I mean, Twitter you could expect it because you don't know anyone on Twitter. You know, you can get into a battle if you're so inclined, and that's fine. But on Facebook, these are people you know, and you have to interview with or interact with on a daily basis. And it's just, we've never had this before. You know, social media is still relatively young, despite what people think. But I mean, we've never, where it's getting uncomfortable in real life. I'm seeing people who do business with each other. I mean, how do you come back from that?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I avoided it for the last couple of days. I just don't want to engage in it. I ranted about my new iPhone taking 3 weeks to come to me, but my new iPhone case coming overnight.
Yeah, I skipped that. But I think if I can get into it with people I don't know, and I like a good debate. But I mean, I shy away from people I know because I'm going to see them. But I'm watching these people going, is this how it's going to be from now on? It's just, and I thought Facebook ought to have that temporary profile picture, and I think they started that when there was the attack in Paris, where you could change your profile pic, and and it would expire after a certain amount of time.
Well, they had it for the voting.
Well, that was for any political talk, I guess, right? I'd love to be able to hide certain people. Just go, look, I want to.
I think there should be a mute. I mean, Twitter's got that great mute feature where you can mute somebody for, a day, a week, a month, or permanently.
You can unfollow on Facebook, which is essentially the same thing, but it's all manual. Now I got to remember who I unfollowed,
and you've got to go back and do it. I would love to say mute and just say, okay, fine, I'm just done with your talk until the election's over.
I wonder, and I'm not going to get into the mechanics of the vote, or because everyone's just exhausted from it. But I will say this: is we talked about the new normal. This is what the campaign was. It was people being nasty to each other. It was campaigns being nasty, and their surrogates, which were their supporters, going at each other's throats. And now after the election, that's what's remained. That's the ring around the tub right now. Is that it's just there's a complete lack of civility.
It is.
I was in a business meeting. I was telling you this offline. I was in a business meeting yesterday where we were all. There was a group of about 4 people, and there were 2 women who were very upset. And I get it. They were very upset about the election. And the guy I was with was a Trump supporter, and he's a nice guy, but he said the wrong thing, and it just turned into a firestorm. Like it went from 0 to ferocious in like 3 seconds, and he was kind of bewildered by it. And someone said, well, she's very emotional, she's very upset. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know, but I mean, does that excuse? And I'm not picking on her as a Hillary supporter, but I'm seeing this from everybody. I'm afraid that this is going to become normal.
I've seen the reaction is a lot different than any other election I've seen, and certainly this election was a lot different.
Everything
than any
was
I've ever
different.
seen.
There's nothing. People. You can't have a viewpoint without people being hostile. That's incredible to me.
Well, I know my daughter's at American University. She said that the day after the election, they were burning crosses and burning flags in the quad, which was something that, maybe I see it as a result of the election. I didn't expect to see it at American University, which is such a, it's a private school. B, it's just world renowned for their international relations. And I didn't expect to see it there, and that really upset her because she tends to be a liberal conservative. She ended up supporting Hillary. She had supported some of Trump's fiscal initiatives or whatnot, but she just couldn't reconcile voting for Trump. Plus, obviously, you've got the female thing and the glass ceiling and whatnot. But it was just very.
But Yale's the same way. Yeah, matter of fact, that was the story of outrage going around yesterday, and Yale is an institution that is becoming such a parody that of itself that it's starting to just really irk me. I guess one of the professors there, he was an econ professor or something like that.
Yeah,
he said to students who are in pain, you are exempted from the midterm and I'll grade you on the work you've done so far.
Bullshit. No, that's their safe places, and no.
But that's again. I think people are lumping that. Someone online was calling them the delicate snowflakes or whatever, and that's not fair. I think small institutions like Yale. I think mostly the Ivy League. Those are the snowflakes, and even that, it's a small segment of the student population. Just like in the 1960s, that it was the number of hippies was a small percent of the baby boomers.
Right.
That's. So, you can't, this generational thing where you're judging on the generations, you can't do that. But the election, certainly, they have a right to be upset. Because and just like as if Trump had lost, his supporters would have had a right to be upset.
The right was upset when Obama won. The left was upset when Bush won.
Well, it's not the left. What I'm saying is that this follows the Brexit pattern, which is that the people over the age of 45 voted to leave the EU. And the younger people who have a future were dismayed because they saw the value of the EU. And I think that if millennials, if it was only millennials voting for the presidency, I think they would have. I saw the map on Reddit, actually.
It was crazy. It was like Trump would have taken like 3 states or something like that.
No, not even. It was he was going to take West Virginia no matter what. It was like West Virginia and
it was like Kentucky.
Yeah, those two.
And I thought there was like Iowa or something like that.
Yeah.
Somewhere out in the Midwest.
And then everything else was millennials. So first of all, they have a right to protest, and people are calling them out right now on Facebook. They have a right to protest, just as if Trump had lost and his supporters were upset, and they'd have a right to protest and be upset too.
My problem is that it seems that this is a lot more than just a protest. I mean, there's a lot of violence that's going on now. I know there was a shooting in Seattle, not related to thing, but it was near there. We've got the whole Black Lives Matter thing that's going on nationwide, which was going on certainly before the election. We're just in a really different time, and it's a very frightening time to sit there and see how this is. And I'm just very, I mean, we're divided as a nation. We always are divided as a nation going into an election. Once it's over, we need to, and I'm not saying we need to come together and sing Kumbaya, but the nation needs to move forward. And Hillary Clinton said it just so eloquently when she did her concession speech. She said, no, this is America. We've survived this for, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's no different than what we're doing now. We just need to come together and figure out how to make it work.
I'm a pessimist. I always say that I'm not, but I guess I am. I just don't see it happening. I will. This is a whole different discussion, and maybe we'll have Josh come in and we'll talk about the media again. But I mean, the demonization of the media and the media as a monolithic group is just that concept's stupid, because you look at certainly. You talk about angry. I know Fox News was talking about voters are angry. I'm like, well, because you fanned the flames for the last couple of years, and Matt Drudge and Breitbart, but my point with that is that. They have a vested interest in people being upset, because I hate to say it, be oversimplistic, but it is ratings. They have a core audience that are angry and conservative, and not all Republicans are angry conservatives. But the ones who are, that their Fox News is their home base.
Let me sort of back up and interrupt. You said we'll have Josh in again. We've never had Josh in. We had Kenny in.
No. I meant Josh in.
But you said Josh. But Josh Davidsburg would be
don't correct me, John.
A great person to have in, because, and he would have a great perspective there, because he's working with the University of Maryland. So he's working with journalists that are millennials, the ones that are the young, the up and coming. There's not some of the old and crusty Fox people. This is, so that would be a great perspective to look into.
I will say too, though. But I mean. Excuse me. But getting into, if you look at the Capitol, for example, the Annapolis paper, most of those reporters are very young. That's incredible to me. Is just that, and they're really good. They kind of cut their teeth here. I think the Capitol should move to all online. I think that they should forget the print version of the paper. Go all online and use the money they're saving for printing and the facilities and what have you. All right, because I guess they don't have.
And invest it in the talent.
Invest it in the talent, because they do have some good reporters, but I just feel like they don't have many of them. So it would be great to see them say that model, saying, "Look, we're going to do a pay model," which I think is fair because they're generating content, but they have more reporters getting a little more in depth. I mean, because they're all very good. I will say that. And but I remember when a few years ago when you had. Eric Hartley, and he was a great investigative journalist, and he was.
We've got some good talent here. They are strapped. They're covering a big area with less people. I remember we kind of joked about when they tweeted a picture of like an all hands meeting for the election coverage in their conference room, and there was like 8 people.
But they do good work, and they're all on Twitter. You can follow them all. But I'd like to see them. But again, the millennials, they're stepping up. Those are all millennials who are reporters, and they're doing a great job. They're engaged. I'm tired of the generational stereotypes. They're so stupid. They really are. Mm-hmm. The fact that you have baby boomers calling out millennials is hilarious. I mean, baby boomers are the most pampered generation, and I'm generalizing with generations, but I don't know. I think the Capitol. I get some value to the Capitol. I wish they'd have more reporters. I think if they just stopped the printing, it's
right. No, that makes sense. That makes all the sense in the world there. So we need to look into getting somebody else in to talk about that. I think the Capitol. I agree. This is good. I mean, Paul. I know Paul Gillespie is a friend of mine. He's a photographer.
The photog. He's great.
And if you look at the photogs, there's 3 photographers on staff, which is just way.
And he's a photojournalist. I mean, we can't. We can't.
Oh, him, Josh McCarroll, and Matt.
Yeah, they're photojournalists. It's not. I think people have that. They have the reporter like with the pencil in there behind their ear with their hat on, and But I mean, Paul and the rest of them. I mean, they're photojournalists. They're just as much as the writers are there.
And they need, they could probably use 1 or 2 more. Those guys are stretched. I mean, Paul goes from, Brooklyn down to South County to PG, and it's kind of crazy. But I do think the Capitol did a very good job on the election. I do hope that we move on. I hope that and when I say move on, I want to be very clear that I'm not saying, okay, suck it up and deal with it. I mean, you've got a right to be pissed. You've got a right to protest. But I don't think being violent is the way to do it. I think you turn around, you find some constructive ways to protest, constructive ways to guide the new administration, whether it be by lobbying your congressman. But in all fairness,
violent. If they're burning stuff or burning flags or whatever, which is their right to do. I mean, any real violence you see are going to be outliers. It's not. They're not doing it as a rule, as a movement. The same way that I could find videos of Trump rallies with people dropping the N-word, and
sure.
But do they represent the group? They just don't.
No. CNN last night had somebody on there that said, it's not, the message is not going to get through until we start killing people. I mean, that's a little bit extreme.
But that's red meat, and that's where I look at it. I think the core of our problem in this country. I genuinely believe this. I think the core of our problem is cable news networks. I think that they have found their niche. I think NBC made a profit by accident with their news division in 1984, and before that, all news divisions were lost leaders. And now it's big money, so you have to throw red meat to your viewers. And CNN, well, CNN's horrible, but I mean,
right.
Although the election coverage was great, John King is just absolutely phenomenal as an analyst. But Wolf Blitzer is an embarrassment to journalism, and Fox News. I thought that. Megyn Kelly was really good, and Chris Wallace is excellent. But it's. I think they're the problem. They need people to be upset and revved up and divided, and I think it is by design.
Right. Well, we're looking for kind of a smooth segue out of this, and it's just not happening.
No.
So I say we just let's
put it to bed. I'm tired of talking election stuff. It's been 18 months. I've been fascinated and obsessed, and now I'm tired.
And by the time everybody's listening to this, it's somewhat old news there. But we had a conversation last week, which was kind of interesting, and sort of really put this podcast into perspective. We were talking about locals, what local support
with Gavin.
We get.
Yeah, we were talking. We had 2 podcasts last week. We had the podcast with Gavin, and then we had
Mr. Keys,
the Veterans Day special. Mr. Keys was awesome.
What a great. If you missed that one, we put out a special one last Friday, and it's obviously there. If you subscribe, it'll just come right to your phone. But incredible, 95-year-old World War II vet. Wow.
Yeah, he was.
That's nothing more to say than wow.
Yeah, so check that out. He's a great guy, and there's information there. He's got a museum you can check out, and so give him a call. But anyway, we were talking to Gavin about. He was going to be running for mayor next November. So our local political season is now ramping up, which should be a little more fun. It's not going to be as hostile. But he was talking about his vision of Annapolis and what he saw. And he put a huge emphasis on Annapolis for the locals. Not let's get the tourists out, but him just saying that he really wanted to drive a district.
His whole thing is a vibrant business economy. And it needs to be supported by locals. And one of the points that you made in that interview was everyone's squawking about, poor Stevens Hardware, they went out of business, yet nobody really supported them.
Nope.
And so what do you expect? Yes, sir. Yes,
but look, for example, if you look in Eastport, where the Eastport Athletic Club is right now, they had 2 grocery stores there. And they both went out of business.
Yep.
One was theft. I mean, they're in an area where crime is an issue.
Yeah, one I heard was a crime issue that got them out. And the other one was, I think, before my time here that it was there.
It was So there's 2, but I think it's one of those things that and I do that too. But where you're kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe they're gone. But I couldn't tell you the last time I'd been there. Stephen. So I think people like the idea of something being there. They like the idea, but practically they're not there. So. Yeah. But they were in a niche where they served a downtown that didn't exist anymore, and we talked about that last week, kind of the Disneyfication of downtown Annapolis. But so there's no people want grocery stores downtown. They want they talked about the Dean and DeLuca, which was never on the table, by the way, with the Market House and Stevens, which is a hardware store, which actually wasn't even a hardware store. By the time the last 20 years, it had turned into like just kind of a knick-knack supply place for the boats who come in.
Right.
But
and Mission Barbecue, I think, is a great addition there.
And I think that's gonna serve both. So I think we look at like what if we're going downtown. You and I have done an experiment before where we said. Or not experiment, we had a discussion where what restaurants in Annapolis would draw people from Baltimore or D.C. where you would drive here just for that restaurant.
Right. What's the best of Annapolis?
Right. So
and you don't need to be an advertiser to get into the discussion.
That's a novel concept. You can be included in the category without buying advertising.
You mean, is that how that works?
I guess so.
Is that you buy an ad and then you're a best of?
Yeah. You go, here's your ad and here's your best of category. Wow. I've heard.
Who would have thought?
So what businesses downtown do you, and I was thinking about this when we were driving over here, what business downtown brings the residents from like Bestgate over there or from Parole or from Forest Drive where they're going to brave the parking and brave the chaos downtown just to go downtown, just because they're going somewhere local? There's not a lot of them, but they're there.
No, there's not. I mean, places that I will leave, and I'm not that far away, but I mean, I will leave my house and go downtown. Pips Hot Dogs.
Pips, definitely.
Sophie's Crepes.
Yeah. Let's go Pips. They got the hot dogs and they got the best cheesesteaks in
They do. They come very close to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan, you're not quite there yet, but I think it has to do with...
He's a Philly snot, though, in all fairness.
I think it has to do with having like half a cow simmering on your grill for half a day. But that adds the Philadelphia flavor.
But locals go there. Sophie's Crepes, you're right. That's another one. And I think that's a lot for Naval Academy, too.
Mm-hmm. These are convenient. It's right outside the gate. Right outside of the Barry Gate.
Right. Mason's, too, I think would be...
Yep.
I kind of like that's the lobster roll place, but
I don't like seafood. Nightlife, I would say upstairs at Middleton's on the weekends, which is a piano bar that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. But
it's a baby boomer fest. But it's that's what's his name? It's Larry Lay.
Yep.
Yeah. They have it upstairs. I found that on Mangia. They have that upstairs, which to me turns into like a bumpatorium, like a kind of a. They have the lights and the.
Yeah, they do that whole disco thing. Buddy's was doing it too for a while. I don't know whether they are or not. And Mangia, when I mean, I don't get that. They call themselves, Charlie's Sports Bar. I'm like, come on. It's a 6-seat bar with a TV behind it. I mean, it's not quite a sports bar, but and I do like Mangia. I think they've got a great pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Some of their, I will say, not just a plain pizza, but I think they're gourmet pizzas or whatever.
Why can't we get? I joke about this on the Eastport Forum whenever it goes to shit. But I always say, why can't we get good pizza in this town? And we don't. And I don't want to insult anybody who owns a pizzeria, but I'm going to kind of insult you. We have you come here and they give you your recipe and say, here's the pizza you have to make. And I don't get it. We don't have decent pizza in town. I mean, Vin 909 is awesome, but that's flatbread. That's not real pizza.
Yeah, flatbread is just a snobby word for pizza.
Uh-huh.
I would say that...
there was a place, I remember, this was 15, 16 years ago. It was up at Harbor Place where Robex is now. And it was a Mama Lucia. But it wasn't like the other Mama Lucia that was over by
the mall.
It was totally different. It was like proper New York pizza on wax paper. I would seriously go there 3-4 times a week.
Wow!
And I went there when it was boarded up, and I almost burst into tears.
I mean, as far as pizza goes, as far as a little bit of a non-traditional, I do like Mangia. They've got a Fradiavolo, which is a real hot, spicy one. That's very good, and I do like Rocco's. I think Rocco's is a solid pizza.
I don't know. I don't think we do pizza well in this town. It's very...
Well, I mean, compared to New York or to Chicago, which are two different...
Chicago's not pizza. That's casserole.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are two different animals there, but there's other places that locals would go. Baker's and Company in Eastport.
Oh yeah, I like that place.
Again, parking can be sometimes a challenge on the street there. But Baker's and Company is also a very good place.
Leeward Market, that's tucked back there.
Leeward Harbor Cafe, which is down by sort of around the corner from the Chart House.
Never gone there.
Great breakfast place. Brandon, who plays with Pressing Strings,
oh.
He's the drummer, I believe, and he just opened up a new coffee shop on Mayo Road in Edgewater called Joe's something. But it's where the old, it's not the bong store, because my kids keep correcting me, the old hookah shop. There was a hookah store there that they just opened up there. So, and they do a really good job. Real solid, nothing fancy breakfast, great view of the harbor.
I try to get over to Maryland Ave too. Maryland Ave, we talked about that last week with Gavin. Mm-hmm. Maryland Ave frustrates me because that is a place that cannot just find an identity that works for them. I think there's 5 or 6 different antique places there. There's one, I think it's like Blue Crab Antiques or something like that, and it's awesome.
And you've got Peak House, which is also
Peak House,
good.
Ann Widener. That's great, and Anna Betts we talked about is one of the ones who really get it when it comes to staying open. But I mean, that's like in Midnight Madness, even because I love Midnight Madness, I think that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But even then, I'm kind of like, I kind of go over there just because I feel obligated to, because they get ignored all the time. They are the stepchild of Annapolis, or would it be West Annapolis? Well, that's another thing too. West Annapolis. When was the last time you really gone over there, like shopping?
No.
And there's some great places over there. So mostly antique places and a little art shop and stuff like that.
New restaurant opening up there.
Yeah, what is that? It was Regina's, right? It was Regina's.
Well, Regina's there. There's another one. I don't know what's happening with that, but there's one where the Wild Peach, the peach place. It's an ethnic restaurant called Flamands, which is a Flemish cuisine. And I don't know what the hell Flemish cuisine is, but
it's lots of phlegm. Ugh.
But it's not with a P.
You know what? If Annapolis is like the Georgetown, then Maryland Ave would probably, not Maryland Ave, but West Annapolis would probably be like Old Town Alexandria. It's like where people rarely go there, but it's got its own charm. Mm-hmm. It's got its own following, probably the people who live over there.
Annapolis Street is beautiful with the trees, just to be able to stroll from one end to the other. I still think the BB Bistro was a big loss there. Mm-hmm. That was a great place. I mean, and I do also think that the coffee place, which I'm drawing a total blank on the name of, but they've got the one up in Crownsville as well, is a great addition and a replacement to BB Bistro. But BB Bistro was really neat because of the sandwiches, and they had some dinners and everything else.
I was thinking about that too. This kind of, what are the places in Annapolis that like locals, I don't want to say locals, like places that you haven't, like for example, whenever I drove down 50 for years and years going towards the Bay Bridge, on the right-hand side, there's that antique place. And I didn't know how to get to it.
Was it Jamal's?
No. It was like apparently you go behind Heroes. And you keep going until you hit the sound barrier, and it's right there. And it's a killer antique place. But for probably 15 years, or maybe 20 years, I just drove by it on 50, going, I'd love to see it, but I never went before. I grew up in Bethesda, and there was right off Grosvenor Lane, where Grosvenor Lane met Wisconsin Ave, right under the metro. There's a tree there that's probably 500 years old, and there's a plaque there. It was about 3 or 4 blocks from my mother's house, but you couldn't walk to it. You always drove by it. So probably, I'm 46 right now, probably my entire life I would, and still, I'm at that light, and I can look over and I can see the plaque, but I can't read it. I've never read that plaque in my life, and it's 3 blocks from my mother's house, and I saw it probably once a day, at least for most of my life growing up. I mean, that's how I feel about like the World War II memorial coming in over the Naval Academy Bridge.
Right over 450.
I've never pulled over to sit in 20 years. I've never done it.
It's a great vista of the city and everything else, but it's... I walk a lot. Actually, I'll walk from... I live over in the wrong side of the tracks in Eastport, sort of behind the Giant on Forest Drive, and I will walk downtown often just to get some exercise, and it's amazing what you see. If you just pull in and you see what's happening at the World War II Memorial. But, I mean, as you're walking, I happen to notice a Annapolis walkable trail old sign on the side of one of the speed limit signs. And I tweeted out, said, what the hell is this? And Ellen Moyer came back and said, oh, yeah, it was an initiative that she had tried as she was an alderman to really connect different walking points within the city.
That actually would be kind of cool. Because you zip, how many times you zip by something, there's this details up here on Forest Drive for anyone who goes by. It's next to Jerry's and Main Ingredient, and there's this. Okay. I guess it's like home, like lamps and furniture and stuff like that. I'd passed that for 20 years, never stopped in. I think there's a lot of places like that. We're a small town. We have a ton of places like that you just never really pay attention to.
Right.
Like you were saying, at Eptide. Eptide has a killer burger.
Yep.
And not many people know that. You would say you want to stop at Eptide, grab something to eat, and you just kind of look at you, go, you got to be nuts. It's a dive, but it's a dive with great food.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a great dive, frankly.
No, it really is. It's cheap. It's good. It's solid.
It was on Reddit. Someone asked, what are the best dives in Annapolis? And like half the people on there said Davis's.
Davis's. No, Davis's is not a dive.
If you've got a board, and I love Davis's, don't get me wrong, but if you got a chalkboard with fresh green field green salad and with balsamic vinaigrette, you're not a dive. I think the only true dive in town would be Eptide.
Heroes, possibly.
No, Heroes isn't a dive. They have laminated menus and the high top. No.
Yeah. Eptide would probably be the only one. I won't consider them, but I think Heroes and Davis's could enter into the conversation of dives.
Like a good dive bar
in Annapolis, but I think Eptide is probably
a dive bar is where you end the night, really. Where if you go elsewhere and before you go home, that's like where everyone kind of meets up before they go. That's kind of your dive right there.
And that's a perfect description of the Eptide.
Yeah. On the other end of it, there was a place we discovered recently down Spa. You go all the way down Spa. So if you're coming inbound on Forest and take a right, there's a winery back there, Great Frogs Winery.
Oh yeah. Great Frogs. They've been there about 4 years, and 4 or 5 years. They apparently the people rent the land, and they're wineries. What are they? Vintners.
We make wine.
Yeah, it's a Saturday Night Live sketch, but the great local wine, and they're great.
Actually, I will tell you this: Maryland wine is like turpentine. Essentially, you can pretend it's not, and it's awful because we are subtropical. We don't have a climate for this. We had their wine. It was pretty good. I was amazed because I expected it to be absolute just shit, and it wasn't. It was really good.
See, I'm not that familiar with all of the Maryland wineries. I've had Great Frogs, and I thought that they're very good. There's one on like the far eastern shore winery I've had.
It's just you need hot days and cold nights, sandy soil. We just don't have, and we have too much humidity here. It just doesn't work.
But the neat thing about Great Frogs is that they're very supportive of the community. They're at most of all the festivals and whatnot, and they also have these events. They've got the open tastings and whatnot, but they have like a date night for couples to be able to go out, and they'll have like a movie night. They'll host parties and fundraisers there. As well, and they do partner with a lot of local businesses and charities to bring people there, obviously to show them what they have and be able to buy from their retail store. But they've done a really good job. That's a real big.
But I'll bet you most people don't know that they're there.
No,
they exist. We got and this is a tiny town.
No,
we got a bunch of places.
And if you're listening to this like a year and a half from now, when you get down to Crystal Spring, take a right. There's a lot of places. One place that I really like is Grapes.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that too.
And they've got some funky, eclectic menus that changed quite a bit. Not cheap, but the wine is always very good. And what I find is that
that's right next to, if people don't know, that's right next to Wine Cellars of Annapolis, over at Clock Tower.
And actually, it's owned by Patrick Boussalat. Same thing. And actually, what's the market that's owned by Stacy?
Oh, that's Tastings Gourmet.
Tastings Gourmet Market, owned by...
I think they just crossed their 10-year anniversary the other day.
So, it's a great little foodie section there between the wine bar, the wine store, and then the primarily cheese at Tastings Gourmet Market. And, there's some meats and stuff like that in there as well. But
I wish Annapolis had more districts like that. Like you just said, it's a nice food area. But, where you knew that you could go somewhere that you have Tasting Gourmet Market, you have Grapes, you have the wine place. But
you used to have a butcher there.
Yeah, that was Mike Smullen's butcher was awesome. My butcher was great.
My favorite butcher?
My Butcher and More.
My Butcher and More.
That was great. But you look at the Design District, for example, over in Chickapin.
They've done a good job of that.
And I think years ago, the Annapolis Business Association, that the new leaders who were there for a few years, they all owned boutiques, and there were women who were just very stylish, and they wanted to rebrand Annapolis, like we talked with Gavin. They wanted to get away from that historical colonial feel and get to that kind of shishi, high rent sort of art or design district sort of thing. And they didn't get much traction, but I thought it was an interesting concept. But we don't have defined. We have defined areas in Annapolis, but they're just defined areas. They're not for what they do.
Right.
Like if you look at U Street in DC, where that's like the height of like local black culture, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Georgetown has got that overall. I mean, I guess that's not as specific, but I mean, you look back in the day. If you look at the Bowery in New York, which is all the restaurant supply places, but that had a heavy music scene, of course. David Bowie lived there for a while. But we don't have those well-defined areas in this town. We could.
Right. I want to go back to that Grapes in that Clock Tower place. I forgot also about another foodie place there is Sweetheart Patisserie.
Oh, yeah, the bakery place.
And again, there you go. You just said, oh, yeah, that's right. I mean,
I have so many places like that in Annapolis that I get bad because you get, like, if you, like, Soul is one. Like, Soul's a new restaurant there, upstart up there. We're off South Cherry Grove.
South Cherry Grove.
But
by Lido and the CVS.
I always forget they're there. Just going, oh, yeah. But we have so many restaurants like that you just kind of forget it.
And I do like Soul. I think it's good. I've always had problems with the way they get stuff out, and I mean, it's this whole small plates concept.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I'm out there with Teresa or something like that, she'll have like a fishy thing, and I don't do fish, and they bring hers out, so I'll just say, yeah, go ahead and eat it, and I'll just wait till my steak comes out. But they're very good.
I met someone the other day. They lived here for 20 some years, and I said something about Giolitti, Giolitti Deli, which is up there next to Union Jacks, up next to Pearl Town Center, and they're phenomenal.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I've never heard of it. I'm like, how can you not hear of it? That's literally 3 miles from you, 4 miles. That's crazy that you don't know it exists.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that it's funny you talk about Giolitti's. One of my Facebook memories came up and said that it was this is a memory with, do you remember, oh gosh, what was the sort of the Gadfly Facebook page that was always... with all the gossip, I can't remember what it was called.
Chatter,
but
Annapolis
yes,
Chatter.
the Annapolis Chatter. There was a comment from there because I had said they were talking about delis or something like that, and I said, "Oh, I would much prefer Giolitti's or the Big Cheese." And somebody says, "Oh yeah, spend like twice as much and whatnot." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, if it's that good, if it's good, I don't mind spending twice as much as like 3 slices of giant prepackaged Oscar Mayer,
right.
on a nothing roll."
I miss the movie theater over in Eastport. I used to love going to that theater and to have dinner there, and they go over to Squisitos at the time, or go over to Adam's Ribs. But I mean,
I've had a lot of people ask me about that lately, about what's happening with it and why nothing's ever gone there. And from what I gather, it's got a slanted concrete floor. And to even that out and level it out,
this is a theater,
is a real problem. As opposed to having a flat floor and I guess building risers to look down with the chairs. Apparently that's a real problem. But there's a big development that's looking to redevelop that whole thing with got a couple hundred apartments above it. That whole shopping center. So that'll be interesting to see if that's going. That looks like it's going forward there as well. But there's a ton of places. I mean, you look just generally around Maryland. Meriwether, I think, is just
I grew up in Meriwether Post. That was, remember the album, The Loadout? Or I'm sorry, it was Running on Empty. It was Jackson Brown.
Yeah, Jackson Brown, the song The Loadout.
Yeah, because my parents were at that at that concert where he
at the show where he
recorded that one and Stay and what was the other song? There was like 4 songs on that album he recorded there. Because it's small and it's intimate, but I love that place.
It is. Getting out of Annapolis a little bit, you look at the downtown, and certainly they can use the help right now, but they seem to have really figured out how to keep Main Street moving as Ellicott City. I
always thought that they could be a model for Annapolis, and just like Frederick could. I
mean, they've got just such funky little antique stores and the bistros and the pubs and whatnot. It's
you don't sound like you have a girlfriend, John.
It was funny. We were in Ellicott City before the flood, and it was the day or the week that the Pokemon Go came out, and we sat on the sidewalk on a bench before we went to dinner because her daughter was had something to do up that way, and we counted something within like a half hour. There was something like 140 people, all walking down the street, looking down, playing their Pokemon Go.
Yeah, they have fires and floods and firstborn dying, and water.
And they're now open again, which is they just reopened Main Street. I mean, the businesses are slowly coming back, and it's Howard County and Ken Ullman did a Ken Ullman. Did I screw that up? I think whether he lost, I don't know. But they did. I think it's Ken Ullman, but did just a wonderful job of getting it, handling that and getting that after that devastating flood back together again.
We got some great areas. I mean, if you go over to Eastern Shore too, like St. Michael's, of course, it's ridiculous. I mean, I see that as a model for Annapolis too. Is that they really get where they I mean, there's not that many locals there in St. Michael's, in all fairness,
right?
But it's not all crap T-shirt shops or Chotsky shops too. They have some really cool stuff there. Like, I mean, it's small, but I mean, you can go over on the Eastern Shore. There's just so much stuff to do over there before you get to Ocean City,
right? But I would say, locally in Annapolis, I would say you find more locals on Maryland Avenue and West Annapolis than you probably would downtown.
Maybe. Like, I mean, there's some restaurants downtown that serve both. Like, I'm thinking the Vida Taco or Taco Vida. That place is awesome. And then there's like the niche place there.
I've got a problem with them, but that's okay. I won't get into it.
Great. Just add that to the sponsors.
I mean, you've got Vida, which is doing very well. You've got Fox's Den, which is also doing fairly well. Redwood Wine Bar.
Like I said, they get both. I mean, they get it. They serve everybody. I think I think once you get down towards Market Square, that's when the tourist fare starts, and the food is kind of mediocre yet expensive.
I think it's funny. I looked at Yelp one time, and I would love to plot it out on a map and see, but I'm pretty sure my theory would hold. But the closer you get to the water, the lower your star rating, because your prices are up, your service is down, and you figure you're trading on the location.
And that's true. So Kath and I went to New Orleans back in 2000, maybe 99, 2000. So we go to New Orleans, and we decide we want to go out to dinner. So we find this steakhouse, and it's like downtown. So we make reservations. I'm not even 30 yet, and so we get in the cab, and the guy goes, "So where to?" So we tell him, and he goes, "I'll take you there, I guess." And I said, "What do you mean you guess?" He goes, "Well, you're in New Orleans, and you're going to a steakhouse." He goes, yeah. I said, "Well, can you take it somewhere better?" He goes, "Yeah, do you want to go where the locals go?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." Now, the guy's probably getting a kickback, in all fairness. I mean, he probably makes a speech every time he picks up the tourists. But he took us out to, like out towards Pontchartrain, we probably went 20 miles. And we were out in the sticks, and there was nothing around. And it was like a movie. We pulled up to this restaurant that was in the middle of this, like, dirt parking lot, or parking dirt. And we walked in, and it was like from Central Casting. It was these big Cajun dudes with like overalls, and I swear to God, plaid shirts underneath with big beards.
Duck Dynasty hadn't quite finished casting
exactly.
yet.
And they had like the plastic checked tablecloths, and I'm in a suit and she's in a black dress. No one gives us a second glance. No one. So we just sit down, and like they slap down a pitcher of beer, and they have the crawfish. I mean. Maybe this is just like one of those places they created, and these people are hired to do that. But I mean, I had alligator, and it was the best. Here we are, 20 years later, talking about it, and it
made an impression.
It did. It just and I guess when people come to Annapolis, I don't know if you have any of that. I mean,
sure we do. Called Sinfron Terrace.
Sinfron Terrace, Vin 909.
Well, no, I'm talking about in the crappy section, and it's like right next to the sketchy liquor store.
Yeah, like that liquor store.
You park in the dirt parking lot.
Yeah, I know.
Some of the best food out there, and we had Walter on here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, his food's phenomenal.
Talking about the Hispanic thing, and if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. That's also a very informative thing with the growing population that we've got in Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, El Cabrito's awesome. Speaking of which, yeah, all these, and also the Salvadorians come in. All these little restaurants are springing up, and they're really good if you're in the mood to explore. Mm-hmm. But so I mean, we got. Just sometimes I feel like I got to reacquaint myself with my own city. That you get in a rut, you go to the same places over and over. That's nothing against Mission, because they have a great mission to what they do, and I think that the food's pretty good. But I mean, there's a lot of local guys who just you forget that they're there.
Well, it's funny. One thing that I do is sometimes it's kind of nice to be a tourist in your own city, and some of it's BS and whatnot. But I mean, I'll get on the water taxi in the summer.
I've never done that.
And just listen. Well, it's actually awesome. And if you live in Watergate, I don't know what the new management, but they used to include water taxi.
I know
in your rent, so you could have water taxi downtown, which would be like awesome for parties, I would guess. But to listen, maybe go on the Elizabeth Ann or the Miss Ann, whatever the watermark boat's called, or the Harbor Queen, and listen to what they're telling.
You don't do that stuff till people come in from out of town. Then you're kind of doing. They think you do that all the time, and you're like, I grew up. I was born in Washington D.C. and I grew up in Bethesda, like 3 miles off the D.C. line. And I spent so much time in Georgetown because the drinking age was, But I never went to any of those places downtown except for the Air and Space Museum. I never went to the Monument. I never did any of that stuff because you just always assume you're going to do it and you just don't ever get around to it.
Right.
I think Annapolis is kind of the same way. But I think you're right. We should have something where you're just like a program, so like Restaurant Week, where it's like you just become reacquainted with the Annapolis you forgot. You think you know Annapolis, but you don't.
Right. Well, Restaurant Week, we do that in end of February, beginning of March. And I'm
getting better and better. I like that a lot.
It is. That's one of my. I haven't been there, and one of the ones I discovered last year that I really ended up liking, and it's a special dinner. It's not something I would go to every night, similar to Lunis's. Is the Severn Inn.
I haven't been there. I've been there. I like Severn Inn. The view's phenomenal, of course. That's right.
And I'll tell you the thing that really pissed me off about that is we went in, and it was actually I sampled it on Restaurant Week on the price fixed menu, but then I went back, and it was like, oh, do you want to sit in the dining room? It was like, yeah, and we weren't really very hungry, but it was the full menu and whatnot. But they didn't offer us to sit in the bar, and on our way out, after we spent $150 on dinner, I was like, oh, well, what are the hours of the bar? The little pub area in the bar. I said, oh, it's open all the time. We've got a limited menu, and it had exactly what we were looking for, like the burgers and the something fairly light. And I was like, wow. I said that would have been nice when we walked in. And they said, oh, do you want to sit in the pub or do you want to sit in the dining room?
It kills me though. Speaking of which, because Cantler's is over there, which we don't go to really because I find that to be touristy. But we're at the heart of the Chesapeake Bay country here. We don't have a decent crab house anywhere. I mean, we got Mike's over off Riva.
Right.
I don't know about Wild Country Seafood, which is
Wild Country is. I don't do seafood, but I've never heard anybody not rave.
And if you haven't gone to visit them, they are in the bowels of Eastport. Like you have to go down like an alley at one point, and I think it's a father and son waterman duo. Yeah. Where they go out in the morning and then they have to bring stuff in because you're not getting shrimp here.
Yeah, I mean you head down toward the Annapolis Maritime Museum, you hang a left at the boiler. Go straight past the dumpster through the gate. And
I know. So I don't know if they do crab, but that's horrible. And no offense to Mr. Blonder, but I mean, Buddy's is certainly not a proper crab house. But I mean,
no, it's a place where you can get crabs. Which there are very few here in Annapolis.
But
I mean, you just named every place that you can crack crabs for the most part.
Yeah, and actually, so yeah. You're not. There's no parking in Eastport for tourists. If you're a tourist and you're coming here, you can get a crab cake. You're not getting crabs unless you're going to Buddy's. And again, they're not proper.
Buddy's, Cantler's, and Mike's. I believe. I don't know of any other places that serve crabs like beat them up and hit them with a hammer.
I don't know if Pit Boys is now doing that, or because I know
they were supposed to. I don't know that they were at the time because they just reopened up on Forest Drive right by Spa Road.
Right. So I don't know, but that's as a local that's terrible. You can't go. We used to go out in Eastport or Edgewater. There was that place Hyman's. I can't really embarrass myself there, but that was really phenomenal. But I don't know, that to me is that's a shame that I find the money I'd open the place.
Well, I'll tell you, but you talked about like just a little bit of undiscovered places, and I got into a discussion on the Eastport forum. They were talking about what's a good gym and whatnot, and I will always.
I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
I'll always jump on the Pip Moyer Rec Center. Yeah. Great bargain for people that live in the area, and even better bargain for somebody that lives within the corporate limits of the city of Annapolis.
My wife and I were the number 1 and number 2 members at Annapolis Athletic Club because I went in when they were building it, and we joined. I sat down like on the.
That's the old supermarket, right?
Right. So, and they're still there. They're great. They got all the amenities and stuff. They're high end, but I mean they're a little pricey for what I want. But I joined Pip Moyer, and I don't live in the city, and I still got a great rate. I mean, it's no frills. But it's clean. It's
clean, modern weightlifting equipment, modern aerobic equipment, basketball courts, rock climbing wall, indoor track. They've got all the outdoor rec stuff. They got baseball fields.
Is that making money?
It is not paying off its debt service for building the thing because this was Ellen Moyer's thing, and to get this built. But it is self-sustaining. So if somebody wanted to pay off their mortgage. It would totally make money because you can rent rooms there. You can rent meeting rooms. There's a kitchen there that if you want to rent and have a birthday party. They do offer classes.
But they're talking about privatizing that.
Yeah. man, I keep hearing that Ross Arnett is on this privatizing bandwagon, that he's already in little talks with the people that own the Y, which purchased Big Vanilla,
right,
both in the Pasadena and Arnold locations, to do it. And I don't see a need for that. I think privatization really works in some ways. I think the trash in the city of Annapolis probably has worked okay. I don't know that it has saved us any money, but I don't think the service.
That's what I don't get. All right? So not to start bashing again, being Captain Negativity, but so let's say you have 50 people working for collecting trash throughout the city. That's probably more than. But let's just say you do. So you say, okay, we want to privatize this to save money. And they say, okay. So basically, we're not going to pick up trash anymore, but we're going to take those 50 employees and we're going to find them somewhere else in government. You're still paying their salaries and you're still paying the pensions and the benefits and everything that goes along with that. You're not paying for maintenance of trucks or the truck fleet. I mean, do you really save any money? Like, I just feel that whenever Annapolis privatizes, they don't actually do it. They half-step. I mean, that's what they did with parking to an extent. I think they gave the employees the choice to go to SP Plus. Or they said, or you can stay here. But in the point of privatizing is that you're shedding the cost of those employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of privatization always tends to be a lot more financially beneficial to the city than the reality is. For instance, we'll talk about the parking that they did. All the employees were given the option of moving into a different department or going to work for that company.
SP Plus.
Most people stayed with the city. So SP Plus.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, the benefit, the pay's good. The benefits are phenomenal.
What did the city gain ultimately? I mean, they're paying these people. They're paying the salaries of their people. It's all passed through. Probably some wear and tear on some vehicles. I don't know whether they sold the vehicles that were doing parking enforcement before. But very, very minimal. Like you said, with the trash collection, you've got some maintenance people that you could probably save on, but they're still there, still working their rough 35 hours a week. Yeah, I figured that'd just get you going. But the 35 hours a week that the city employees work, you've got, they probably got rid of some trash trucks.
Holidays. Well, I guess I just don't. Well, and I've heard it said, and we've mentioned this before, that the argument coming from a member or two of city council saying that, well, sure, we're paying a lot for this, and the taxes are high, but we're getting a level of service that is so much superior to you that you would get otherwise. And of course, I don't.
That's a nice soundbite, Sheila. I mean,
but I just don't. But I mean, I guess. So going back to the rec center, that's why I ask you if they're paying their bills. That's one thing. Are you actually? Would you? I mean, they're overstaffed.
They are. They can make some more money. I mean, every time I go in, there's like 3 people behind the front desk just talking.
Yep.
And
they're overstaffed, like the rest.
And I jokingly, somebody says, "Oh, how much does it cost to the rec center?" I said, "Well, you play your cards right. You just walk right through, and nobody can say anything." And I did try that one time. I had lost my card, my membership card, and I walked through every day, 5 days a week, for a month before anybody said anything. I didn't beep it, scan it, or anything like that. And I could have been anybody. I mean, perhaps they recognized me because I'm there a bunch, or maybe they were looking, but it didn't seem to be that they were looking. I think there's some tightening up you could do in there, and maybe that'll happen with the new park and rec person. I don't know whether the mayor is going to hire anybody or whether he's going to be able to hire anybody, because the existing parks and recs director, he quit first this month.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So you certainly tighten things up there. I would like to see it opened a little bit later. Take 3 of the people that are one extra person on that front desk, and let them stay there till 11 o'clock at night.
That's a difference I see, and I think that's a lot of what Trump kind of coasted in that concept that government equals lazy, private industry equals cutting edge, which isn't necessarily true on either side. I mean, I think privatization doesn't always work because all companies aren't superior. I mean, some companies are better run than others, so you might have a company that could come in and run it better, or there's a company that would come in and run it the same. I think looking at Town Park and SP Plus is a perfect example of that. I mean, we can have some quibbles with it, with the system or anything, but I mean, I don't think it's really that much different from one to another.
No.
So that's how I feel with. But my problem with government, especially city government, is fine is good enough. Just being fine is good enough. Just being adequate. Whereas, if you work in the private industry, there's always that push to be better and to make more money. Where were we last year compared to this year?
Make more money, create more money or more efficiencies or something along those lines.
So if you're a sales manager, if you're a general manager, they'd say, hey, why are you not? This is where you were with private room rentals last year, and you brought in $200,000, and this year you're at $100,000. What the hell's going on? But you don't get that instead because there's no one pushing. There's no one whipping people along saying, hey, you really got to up your game. So right. I think if you have a private industry come in, or if you privatized it, I do think they would be better run in so much as it could make more money. Would that make a difference to the city? Not really, because if they're getting by now, it's fine. And if a company comes in and they privatize it and they make more money, it goes to their bottom line. So who really cares? So I guess it's a push.
I don't know whether the mayor and some of the council are on a selling spree, because they've sold the old rec center downtown on what purports to be a bad deal. Yeah. Certainly not the maximum deal they got. They're looking at selling the golf course that the city owns, which is bizarre in and of itself and a whole different conversation.
Wait, that they own it?
The city owns it.
Yeah, no, but it's bizarre that they own it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, what the hell? It's like 6 miles outside of the city, and we own a golf course. To the county, they're looking to do that. And now they're looking to privatize it, and I don't know what the deal would be that Alderman Arnett is talking to them. Are they looking at selling them the building? Or are they looking at just giving them a management contract? I don't know what specifically they're looking at for the rec center, and everything's been pretty tight-lipped there. But certainly, I would think with a $3 million influx from the golf course, whatever they got, the $2 million or whatever it was for the old rec center, and maybe they might get $10 million for this one.
Right.
To have an extra $15-20 million would look good on a mayoral budget as you go into an election year.
I guess, but that money just, after a while, you forget where that money comes from, and it just gets spent. If you have extra money, you can spend it. I don't know. Privatization, it's not a knee-jerk thing for me. I believe it. I believe that you have to have regulation. So I don't believe that privatization is the answer to everything. My garbage is picked up by a county contractor, and they pick up the garbage. They're not fantastic about it.
Right.
If they drop some recycling on the way, they don't really care. I rage because they slide the stuff in front of the drive. So it's, they do the job, and I think it's one of those things that you don't notice trash collection, you don't notice anything else until it's screwed up. Right. But I know that the mayor, typically that's a Republican sort of position, is that privatization is the answer, and I don't know, maybe it is. I don't know in this case. I don't know.
Well, I do know, and you've said it often too, and I agree with you. The city is not a jobs program.
It shouldn't be, but
primarily it is. It's
Washington D.C. certainly in the 1980s was a jobs program, and it was open. It wasn't an open secret even. They were very open that it was a jobs program.
Right.
Marion Barry wanted to create a black middle class. That was his goal, and his way to do that was government. And I'm not making a judgment of that, because it did work. It absolutely did.
To a degree. Yeah.
But it was chaotic when it did happen. And I'm not saying that's not what's happening here, but it is a, we talk about the size of city government, and could it be smaller or should it be smaller? And, I'm of the mind that it should, because it's, for the size of government we have now, or that Annapolis has now, I don't see the efficiency or the high level of service that it's claimed that they have. I'm not saying that the employees don't work. They don't work hard. Most of them do, of course. But that you can still have hardworking people that you probably don't need in that position.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I don't want to see anyone out of work, but
yeah. Well, we're having good talk. Hit a bunch of things. We hit the election.
Yeah, we kept it light this time, huh?
Yeah.
We wanted to, but if you have any suggestions of what you want us to talk about, we have some guests coming up. We have some events coming up, and we're gonna keep you abreast of that. We got someone in a couple weeks that's going to be kind of exciting for us.
It's big, huge.
And
not that huge.
And we're gonna have a couple live events that we're working on right now that are around Christmas time, that we're going to be out in local bars, which is my natural habitat, or used to be.
Right.
But let us know at info@themarylandcrabs.com if you have any sort of
suggestions.
and
if you've got any hidden gems of places that you think most people don't know that are just freaking awesome that you need to try out, email that to us, or tweet it to us, or Facebook it to us, or something like that, and we'll compile a list of that and put that out there, because I think that's help the community. But you can find us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast. We've got Facebook pages and groups called the Maryland Crabs. The website is themarylandcrabs.com. Email at info@themarylandcrabs.com. Boy, look at all these ways you can contact us.
A lot of stuff. People hate us. Or you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Tim Hamilton47, or you can find John at Ian Annapolis, and you can reach out to us. And then just when it comes to the podcast, a lot of people are clicking the links and listening on when they're at work or what have you, because we've had a bunch of downloads. I think our last one was around 500
Yeah,
downloads.
my God, we had 500 on that last episode. It was awesome.
So
thank you.
What we'd like you to do, though, is if you go to iTunes on your device or Google Play, you subscribe to the podcast, and then every time that there's a new podcast pushed out, it's magically on your device, and you can listen right there. So go to iTunes or Google Play and subscribe to the podcast right there. And every time there's a new episode, boom, you got it.
It's just like that subscription to Playboy that you used to have.
Playboy's cute.
It comes right to your door.
I'll introduce you to something called internet porn, John.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And then go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, because that would be wonderful. And then the review would be nice. We're getting some funny reviews and some nice reviews. They're great. And tell your friends. And then go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes we've had. We said some killer ones. The Mr. Keys, the one with Gavin and Mr. Eads and Jessica Packler and Sean O'Neill and Kenny Burns. Yeah. And we're getting a library at this point. That's
a library. I haven't been to a library in a long time. Yes, I have. I was there when they did the 3D printing.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did that. It was really cool.
That's right. So, but yeah. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for the 500 downloads from last time. That was I don't know what it is at this point, but I know it was over 500 last time I looked.
Billions.
And rate us. Have a good week, and we will see you next Thursday, right about noontime.
Next Thursday. Bye-bye.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.